This is my presentation on the topic, have postmodernist book ideas had an impact on TV or film animation since 1980s and 1990s? So let's get to it. First, let's establish what is postmodernism. Well, basically a reaction to modernism. What is modernism? Modern philosophy was built on the beliefs in rational thinking and human reason. Also in also authority figures and religion was still a major deal, but postmodernism rejects all of it. Postmodernists were skeptical and doubted everything that was considered unshakable facts. So how do you, as somebody who might not know a lot about modernism, postmodernism, can still be familiar with it? Well, there are a bunch of movies that contain some postmodernist elements, like Shrek from 2001, which is basically a deconstruction of a fairy tale genre, or Matrix from 1999, that critiqued authority and the ignorance of society. And from the most recent examples, Barbie from 2023, that explored identity and the themes of existence. These are the features that make these movies postmodernist. And these two animated series as well, in my opinion. So I am going to explore whether it's true or not, and whether these two animated series have these postmodernist distinct features. Let's first look at deconstruction. As Jacques Derrida explains it, this is what deconstruction is made of. Not the mixture, but the tension between memory, fidelity, the preservation of something that has already been given to us, and at the same time, heterogeneity, something absolutely new, and the break. Basically, in this case, deconstruction is the cliches that were prescribed to a certain genre and overused in media for many years, over and over again. Like a good joke, deconstruction starts with setting up some expectations. What do you expect from a shonen genre? Well, probably it's a main lead goes on a grand adventure to get some powers and defeat some bosses on the way, probably with major bit of violence, to become a god, king of pirates, the greatest Hokage, you name it. And what about the magical girls genre? Well, it's a harmless adventure about middle school girls obtaining powers through magical contract and fighting evil. No explicit violence in that, of course. But then deconstruction comes in and beats all these expectations to the ground. Usually an aggressive shonen becomes an emotional story about self-growth and self-acceptance. The main character doesn't need to train to get powerful because he's already the most powerful esper in the world. Instead, he works hard to become a better human being and never uses violence to solve his problems. And on the other hand, an anime about magical girls turns out to be a psychological horror. The magical contract that the girls sign is basically a death sentence, and that they sign for the sake of one wish, and for that wish they are destined to face a horrible demise. Second comes the critique of authority and society, which basically means that the characters rebel against established norms and the ones that dictate those norms. When it comes to Mob Psycho, it gave us a lot of examples on the rebellion against authorities that use their power to manipulate others. But the most personal example in the show is when the main character rebels against his mentor. Mob has grown a lot and learned to speak up for himself. And when his mentor explicitly neglects his desires and puts pressure on him to maintain control, Mob decides that he's not going to take it any longer. With Madoka Magica, it's a little bit more complicated because it's a rebellion not just against one individual's beliefs, but the whole society. These middle school girls fight and risk their lives and die every day, and nobody will ever think or mourn them because nobody knows they exist, and rather society doesn't really care. Postmodernist identity doesn't really have a distinct definition except for it's fluid and never stable. Throughout the show, Mob struggles to find himself, but it's not really about who he is, but rather what makes him who he is. In the book, The Postmodern Condition, Lyotard professes a preference, and this also aligns with Lyotard's theory. In the book, The Postmodern Condition, Lyotard professes a preference for this plurality of small narratives that compete with each other, replacing the totalitarianism of grand narratives. At the end of the show, we see it literally. Mob confronts his subconscious ego, an embodiment of his suppressed emotions and powers, and accepts it as another part of himself. Existential themes are a pivotal part of postmodern philosophy, and a part of that philosophy can be considered nihilism. Nihilism, as described by Friedrich Nietzsche, is when any aim is lacking, any answer to the question why is lacking. What does nihilism mean? That the supreme values devaluate themselves. These young girls are trapped in the unbreakable cycle of suffering and start to lose faith in everything they used to believe in. So can these titles be considered postmodernists? Well, with all the evidence provided, I would say that it's safe to state that yes, they can. Thank you. Okay.